Excellent. Well, welcome to another account-based Friday. And every Friday we are have a special guest that speaks to a number of things, either account-based or demand-based. Today we've got Jeff Winter, CMO of Duck Software, and we're going to be talking a lot about his experience and expertise in and around account-based. Every week we start off with a poll, and I was a bit inspired to run this poll because a prospect was asking me some questions around focus areas, and it brought into the question of, well, how many accounts should we be focused on? And to my surprise, I thought the number would be higher, actually. So the question was, is your company's growth strategy focused on fewer or more accounts? In my mind, because time is so limited right now and salespeople are getting pulled on both directions of the funnel, of the top of the funnel, as well as on the other side of the funnel or other side of the bow tie of upsell, cross-sell, my sense was that fewer accounts are going to be the focus area as opposed to more. But I don't know, Megan, did you have a point of view on this?
I did. I was in the minority on this. I picked more accounts. I think that's because I'm in a sort of scale up growth stage company that's really looking to engage more of the companies that could benefit from our work. So we're definitely in that camp, but I'm not surprised, given economic conditions, that people are smartly saying, "Hey, let's maybe reduce our focus." I'm still in a super account-based environment, so it's sort of like a default. It's not going to be cast of thousands, so we're just expanding within our account-based universe. But at the same time, I totally understand, where people would be saying, "Let's focus more on a smaller number of accounts." And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw people focusing more on their current customers, just holding on to them, as opposed to, looking at this as a time to expand. I think there's, I saw a really interesting post from one of my former colleagues at Winning by Design about saying, "Hey, make sure you are coaching your teams. Even if your clients aren't saying they're thinking of defecting, they probably are." There's, budget issues going around everywhere. So anyhow, food for thought here. But Jeff Winter, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited you're here. And Jeff has been a longtime client and industry peer, and it's been fun to watch the evolution of your career, Jeff, now at Duck Creek Software. And I'm just really excited to have your point of view on kind of what's happening in our dynamic market. So welcome.
It is good to be here and good to speaking with you. And I think this is a couple of jobs, each of us, since we started on our together many, many years ago. So great to be speaking with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff was one of the first winners of our account-based marketing programs of the year awards back in the Serious Decisions days. So I'm curious to see how you've taken that knowledge forward, and clearly it's been working for you. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the poll. What is sort of your focus right now?
I think the answer to the poll really depends on what kind of company you work for and what the products or services you deliver. Yeah. Currently at Duck Creek, we have sort of a very low volume but high value account base. We sell software that is really foundational to property insurance carriers. It's their core policy administration, claims processing, billing processes. So these are big deals that take a long time and are very strategic to the customer. So in that vein, we take sort of a smaller approach, right? Where we really target a smaller number of accounts and really stay with them for a sustained period of time. Not talking 1 or 2 quarters. We're talking 4, 6, 8 quarters. So it is a really long-term, broad-based approach. And I think you made a really good point about the economy and focusing on net new versus install base. We are focusing a little bit more on install base. And again, that's the nature of a little bit of Duck Creek, kind of a land and expand, given the way that our companies or customers buy from us. So a little bit smaller and a little bit more focused on the here and now for our existing install base.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I think that's going to be the right answer for a lot of companies. Hopefully they'll find themselves, really thinking about that, holding on to the business they have. I think that's been a really positive evolution, I think, in tech in general, is that, focus on how do we help our customers get to impact. And this is one of those moments to, be able, if you've been doing that, you'll reap the rewards. If you haven't, good luck. Anyhow, so Jeff, one of the reasons I was really excited for you to join our Account-Based Friday conversation is because you were really kind of one of the earlier adopters of the approach, kind of when it was first taking hold in B2B. Which means that you've been able to see, its application in multiple companies, and also sort of evolve with it and grow and change with the different opportunities. Would love for you to talk a little bit about, what you've seen in the market and how you've seen account-based strategies and tactics change.
So the way that I would talk about it is a lot's changed, but a lot hasn't changed. The things that have not changed are things like the importance of selecting the right accounts for your business. Again, whether your product life cycle is or the sales cycle is really long, like at Duck Creek, or not. So account selection is really important. Alignment with the sales team, incredibly important. The difference, if the strategy for an account is to go penetrate new areas of the business, that's one thing. If the strategy for the account is to put your arms around the existing opportunity that's going to close in the next month or two, and you want to do everything you can to get that opportunity over the line, that's important. So again, that alignment with sales and understanding exactly what the goal is for those accounts is absolutely critical. One of the things that has changed the most, and again, going back, what, Megan, 10 years?
At least, yeah.
Been a while. The maturity of technology at the time was early days, right? In terms of, the really amazing data plays with, the different ABM technology providers. So we had tools and we were using them, but I would say the balance of kind of physical / old school ABM, right? Lifestyle events, getting to know the customers on a personal level, leveraging custom content was kind of a bigger part relative to digital marketing and all the digital ads and intent data, and following the customers across their digital journey. And as we progressed, I would say digital has become a lot more prominent in ABM programs. And during COVID, that was it. It was 100% digital. As we move out of COVID, I do think the ability to connect with human beings on a human level with physical meetings and innovation days and lifestyle events, I think that should come back into play a little bit. I actually just came from an internal meeting at an office where, again, like a lot of people are experiencing, we haven't seen each other in 2.5 years. This is so amazing. I think the same is true for customers, right? They want to get out, they want to engage, and so I think a little bit more of a pivot back is not only an opportunity, but I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, for sure. People are so happy to see each other these days. I had one client at an event the other week say, "Oh my gosh, I'm not a hugger, but I've hugged 2 people today." Like, yeah.
But one other thought is just the amount of data.
Yeah.
The data that's available now from the various tools. And, I said I would not name all the tools because, everyone's got their favorite, but it really is incredible. And one of the biggest challenges that presents is actually, what do you do with the data? How do you automate processes based on the data? Do you have the right people to go analyze the data? One of the biggest challenges I've seen across the last 10, 15 years in technology is just the overabundance of technology, right? You have so much marketing technology, you have so much data, but do you have the right people in place to actually look at it, take action, and implement automated processes based on that? So that's another big change, is the skill set to actually use and analyze the data that's coming from these amazing tools.
Yeah, that was, you read my mind exactly, thinking about your industry, and I know nothing about your industry, so I might be off by an order of magnitude here, but my gut would tell me, relative to maybe a higher tech or a technology play, maybe the sales organization could be a little bit older school, meaning they may not be up on the latest and greatest of the technology, or at least we've seen in related industries where there's been a bit of a gap of even using CRM systems differently in high tech versus a non-high tech environment. I'm curious, like how are you able to, if that gap exists, and it may or may not exist, but if it does exist, like how are you able to kind of close that gap, or what are you doing on the sales side to get that alignment around all this data and all this information for them to do something with?
Yeah, our sales team, I would say, to your point, the industry is not one of the more forward-looking industries. Now that's been changing. The amount of venture capital money that's going into insurtech is pretty incredible. So I think the industry is moving quicker than it has in the past, but it is not historically known as kind of early adopter in terms of technology. That's for sure. Our sales team, however, is pretty sophisticated, and they eat the data up. I mean, we have dashboards where we do analysis on each of their territories. Our demand gen field marketing leads sit with their account reps that go through their territories. They show them the intent data, and then they strategize with our BDR function as well, leveraging that around who and how to target. So, like any sales organization, right? A third, right? Third's totally engaged, a third's kind of middling, and a third might be a little bit behind. We're a little bit like that as well. But overall, the feedback on account-based marketing and the data that we can leverage from it, the sales team has been pretty engaged. But we have regular meetings with them. They know the dashboards. We haven't. They're not self-service yet, and I don't know if we can get there. In terms of them having access and kind of doing it on their own. They need a little bit of hand holding, I would say, but that's okay. They're busy. But the adoption's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. And I love the, really close partnership with sales. One of the questions we get a lot from folks who, join us for these conversations is around how do you get sellers to use intent data and other kinds of data that you're providing to them? It's that kind of last mile. What are some of the ways that you've helped sellers kind of know what to do with that data or, done something for them?
I think a lot of it is awareness. Like they don't know that individuals are actually clicking on our website. They don't know that individuals in different divisions have expressed an interest. And so they can see, wow, there might be an RFP coming down the road if we see two people from this other division that I'm not even engaged in. And so that'll prompt them to actually start to think about, okay, who do I need to target? Can I bring up that person or that topic or ask a favor of the people that I do know at the customer? So they're taking actions like that based on the data. And then again, with our BDR function, which used to sit in sales, now sits in marketing, they're actually having conversations around the data. So our BDR functions, just to take a little bit of a pivot, they spend about half of their time kind of on inbound, so qualifying the MQLs and supporting marketing efforts. And then the other half of the time is spent at the direction of sales, strategizing on their territory, making phone calls, booking meetings, confirming whatever, right? Keeping, opportunities warm because they're, like I said, long sales cycles. And so they use this data to go strategize with the BDR to say, hey, let's go target this person or find out more information about this person. So those are kind of the two ways.
How does marketing, as you're talking about kind of that selling motion, and that's really interesting that you're talking about kind of the sales focus on the data and going through the territories as a discipline and a rigor.
Yep.
It almost, I'm trying to think of how sales has changed in terms of the function over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, that I would think that would almost be unheard of. Before it was just pound, 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 pound. And now people are like looking at the data, and it sounds like there's a lot of discipline and structure around that, which is great. Where does marketing come into that? Like what has changed from a marketing perspective and that interface with sales of that information? Like, okay, they're digesting it. Are they asking things of marketing? Are you coming to the table to kind of say, hey, we're going to now run these kinds of plays? Or like, how does that interaction work?
I mean, I just think back, 10 years ago, the conversations were around what events do we have? Can we get a few seats at the ball game? When's the webinar coming? And webinars are good. Don't get me wrong about webinars, right? But now it's around data. They want to know what's going on at the customer. They want to know what they're searching on, who they are, how many people are engaged. And so sales is asking more questions. And now, again, we have data at our fingertips, and it's just part of the regular cadence now. So it's been, I would say, pretty well operationalized for sales to ask and know. The term intent data, right? And again, I've said I wouldn't use the name of the vendors, right? But I mean, they know the name of the vendor, right? And they refer to that, and they understand that that's part of the account-based marketing program.
So thinking about that, this is such an aligned, strategy of how marketing is working with sales, in your company. I'm interested to know, how do you report on marketing's impact on the business? We talked a little bit about the old sourced versus influenced debate. And I could see that being kind of a tough thing given the way that you're collaborating. And it's great that you're collaborating. The problem is you can't be like, marketing did all this stuff in that model. But I'm interested to know how you're measuring marketing success and reporting on that, and what the reaction you get from sales and leadership on.
So I'll give you a firm, direct answer in a second, but I'll give you an anecdote that is literally like 35 minutes old. So we do an open mic kind of day with the sales team, and they could just come and ask random questions. And I actually asked a question around, our BDR function. And someone said it's going really well. And they gave an anecdote around the fact that they knew a CIO. They had a conversation about 6 months ago to get a meeting, and then stuff happened and they kind of dropped the ball. They were working on another couple of opportunities, but then they had the BDR pick up, and actually schedule that meeting. Now, if that turns into an opportunity, technically in our system, that would be influenced, not sourced.
Mm-hmm.
Salesperson doesn't care.
Yeah.
I frankly don't care. However, at the end of the day, at the end of the year, it'd be nice to include that $1, $2, $3 million opportunity, closed or closed won or closed loss in. But in the last 4 companies that I've worked at, Megan, I would say there was one that was really hung up on source versus influenced. The other 3 sales leaders and sales organizations, it was really like one team, one pipeline, as long as we're making our numbers together. Now we still measure, right, source versus influence, because we do want to know. And we also measure how, for marketing sourced opportunities, the conversion rates versus sales sourced opportunities, and if there's a difference in close rates, velocity, and those sort of things. So I'd be naive to say it doesn't matter, because when my CFO, we started to have budget discussions, the more that we could show that marketing actually sourced it, the better. But I think in a healthy, positive culture company where there really is alignment between sales and marketing, the difference between source and influence is becoming less and less important.
Yeah, I think that's to me the hallmark of having that really great trust in the relationship between sales and marketing, is if you can get away from having to prove your value by saying it was 27 opportunities and they yielded this amount of pipeline and that amount of revenue, and therefore white papers, are, we can say the white paper is worth, X amount of dollars. Like, getting away from that conversation is so important, but it only happens when you do have that trust, I feel like. But John, I know you work with a lot of clients on measurement and reporting too, so curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds exactly right. The volume and velocity, and comparing the channels of marketing to sales, I think is a very relevant, KPI to look at. And not knowing your go-to-market strategy, Jeff, do you have any partners? It doesn't sound like it sounds like you're all direct, or mostly direct.
We're evolving. No, we a very robust partner ecosystem. We have kind of solution partners, and then we have systems integrators that work in and around, doing implementations, migrations, etc. And historically, there hasn't been a lot of pipeline generation from the SIs, or the expectation for that, but that is changing. So this year we will have a channel-led demand gen number, but it hasn't been a huge part up to this date.
Yeah, and that would be the other element that we would see in mainly in high tech companies. It's more progressed, where just like sales and marketing, volume and velocity partners would be, a component of that. And it sounds like, Jeff, you're on that trajectory as well, which is interesting. And I think it brings a really interesting point. I think your old company, Megan, they came, I think it was Russ, who I've got a lot of time for, Ross Graber. Very, very bright guy. I think he was saying that channel, he made 5 predictions for 2023, and one of them was channel is less important, or like 40% less important year over year. And I don't know, I'm not sure I'm on board with that. There were some other observations I was on board, but with that one, I think there's a lot of pressure right now for revenue. So if you can get a channel partner at a lower cost to get you business, I don't know if you throw those out. I think the weak partners will get thrown out, though. Maybe that's what he meant by that. But
yeah, it's a strategy that requires a lot of effort. I feel like, I'm sure you're seeing that, Jeff, right? But it's also the case, with technologies like Duck Creek, that you've got, there's a really important relationship though with the people who are, taking it and deploying it inside the customer. And it'll have a lot to do with whether or not your customer wants to stay with you. So I can see where that partner, and it would make sense too, if you've got really strong partnerships that you would want, and those partners are delivering a great experience and great outcomes for those customers, they would be the ones where you'd want more demand from them, because they know, the kinds of customers that they can make successful with your stuff. So that's an interesting one though. Yeah, I'm always happy to see what Ross has to say. So I'll have to check that one out. I'll go find that link. We've talked a bit about, things that have changed in account-based strategies. What do you see, not changing, Jeff? Like what things have sort of stood the test of time? I know you talked about account selection, but are there other things that you think will continue to be critical to success in account-based models?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've noticed, and this happened in one or two of the early programs that I was a part of, and that we kind of gave up too early. And again, this is assuming that there's some sort of long sales cycle and long-term relationship in your ABM programs, but kind of pulling the ripcord a little bit too early. If you don't see results either from, digital activation or whatever it is. And so I think having patience is actually really important. And again, that alignment with sales, that they're not, changing accounts, pulling them in and out. And, there's too much kind of herky-jerky reaction. It takes a long time to build those digital relationships. And so I think that would be number one. Number two, account selection, making sure that you're selecting the right accounts with standard criteria that you're looking at from a really unbiased manner, rather. And the third, I think I mentioned this before, I can't emphasize it enough. It's the goals of the program. Don't assume that sales understands all the possibilities of account-based marketing. You talked about the debate between, source versus influence before, Megan. Depending on the goal, that might not even be a discussion. If the goal for these accounts is in the next 2 months or 4 months to go generate contacts, and that's it, just contacts, right? Not even a lead, not even a meeting, right? Just give me the contacts. And sometimes that's what sales wants. And so I think having that alignment on the goals for the program is, I think, absolutely critical.
Oops.
What's a mistake you see companies making? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think we were both talking. We both have mute on. Yeah, actually, I was on that same theme of mistakes, but I was thinking about your account selection. You've mentioned that twice. Any advice as to how you get to that account selection, like what's worked or to Megan's point, what hasn't worked in account selection process?
Yeah. So the criteria that we use now, it's very specific. It is the size of the potential opportunity. It is the size of the company. We actually have tiers. We have, the number of products that are still available to sell as another criteria. And so it's pretty specific. It's not just, hey, the salesperson has a big deal coming up. And in fact, so yet very, very specific criteria. And so we use revenue and time as kind of two of the big dimensions. In previous companies, when I was at SAP, the account-based marketing program, it was the relationships with the customers were so close that one of the criteria was actually we had relationships with the marketing team inside of the customer to help us promote the program. It was such a partnership between the company, the customer, and SAP that we actually worked with them on account-based marketing activities. Like, hey, we're going to go run a quarterly webinar series, or we're going to do this, innovation day where we're going to come in and do, these different things. when we create custom content, can you help us distribute it internally? And so the criteria was actually that we need a named person in the account that's going to go support these things. We don't do that here at Duck Creek for reasons I won't bore you with, but that was another set of criteria. So I would be really specific about the criteria, and have that aligned with with the sales team before you select the target.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent advice. And kind of building on that, you mentioned not giving up too easily. But I think a lot of times people get forced into giving up easily because it's hard to show impact quickly from account-based programs. That said, you've stood multiple programs up successfully, and I'm curious to know, where do you look for those quick wins to sort of get you the air cover to keep building?
Okay, let's pretend like no salespeople are watching this, right? Part of the account selection process is the sales rep selection process. You don't want to push a rope, it's a third. They could say the same thing about marketers, right? But you want to work with salespeople that know account-based marketing. They know the value. They're not going to be reactive and, oh yes, I have that call with marketing I have to attend to talk about this account. They want it. They know it. They know the value that an ABM program, that the digital tools can provide, and so part of that account selection process is also the rep, right? And so that's absolutely huge. And so if you have that can go a long way to get results early. And then you get that, and you have that sales rep tell the story to the other sales reps, and you get this, positive, self-reinforcing model. I remember during, the SAP days, we actually had we would have calls where we had so many requests for ABM accounts that we had to turn people away. Like, we literally turned people away. Where in other companies, it's kind of like, hey, let's do this. We have budget allocated. We got teams allocated to go support you. And so again, I think picking the right reps is a great way to ensure early results. And don't give up. Don't give up. These programs sometimes take a while, right? So.
Great advice. Go ahead, John. Oh, did we lose John? Oh no. Wait, we lost your camera, John. Anyway, no, that's super good advice. I think, sometimes the inclination is to start with the most skeptical folks in sales to try and win them over, but that isn't, sometimes that's just creating work for yourself. Like, find people who want your help and then help them and make it succeed so that the skeptics are won over, by their peers. I think that is always a good approach. But John, you were trying to say something when we lost your video.
I wholeheartedly agree. I violently agree. You got to have that word of mouth, catch wind, and why push rope, to your point? Like, get that word of mouth flywheel going. And once one salesperson has success, others will hear about it. It's just really hard. You have to be so thoughtful about everything here as a marketer. It's not just the technology. It's not just the data. It's down to the people and really massaging that whole process end to end. So yeah, I think you're very, very sharp observation there.
One other point I wanted to make, and that's kind of the definition of ABM. And I've been saying this for a long time. I know different vendors, have different frameworks around, one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many, and lots of permutations in between. I have a pretty strong bias that one-to-many is not account-based marketing. One-to-many is just good modern marketing. We have the tools to target, and if it's not really specific to an account, and not just from a digital ads perspective, but using all the different tools and tactics that can go into it, from the physical to the digital, to custom content and things in between. So when people start to say about, oh yeah, we do digital targeting, based on keyword searches to, our entire target market or target segment, I'm like, that's just marketing. That's just top of the funnel marketing. So I think when you do talk about ABM internally, and you're educating leadership and you're educating sales and you're talking about account-based marketing, I have a bias that it really is one-to-one. Maybe one-to-few, and you could leverage content and programs to kind of, but it's called account-based marketing for a reason. So.
Right on. I totally agree. I say it's the difference between account-based marketing and marketing to accounts. They're both good. There's
I like that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your point, at least we're getting better at the marketing to accounts part because we have data, because we have tech, and I think the shift to digital over the last couple of years has made us get better at it. So that's a plus. But to your point, let's not call it what it isn't, because that doesn't help anybody. I know we are up on time. John Russo, any last comments or questions for our guest?
Jeff, I really enjoyed the conversation today. Everything that you said made a ton of sense, and great to hear how progressed your selling arm is. Maybe a model for other sales arms too, to kind of adopt. I think a lot of sales companies have challenges with that right now, or at least the ones that we see is just a kind of that absorption of this new way of selling. The fact that your team is doing that, I think, is head and shoulders above a lot of other organizations. So hats off to you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, just one last thing. It's kind of tactical, but we actually have 2 tiers within our account-based marketing program. One we call strategic accounts, and these are accounts 2-3 years out. We see a huge opportunity. And more near term, kind of the next 2, 3, 4 quarters, we call them must-win accounts. And that's where we're trying to get specific opportunities over the line, and doing everything we can with really targeted ads and other activities. So we actually have stratified it kind of at 2 different levels, and deploy kind of different tactics for each. So you might want to consider, again, different levels of focus and engagement.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, especially given what you sell. You're going to have to get out in front of that decision years before a company actually signs on the dotted line. So that makes a ton of sense. But I also like the label. Strategic still means important. It just means not now. Whereas must win, I love that that's sort of like an urgency label. I might just have to bring that to my sales leader.
It's in the pipeline call. Like must win is like, these are absolutely critical to our pipeline and our revenue targets today, like this year or this quarter.
Must win.
Yes.
I like it. All right. Well, thank you to folks who joined us today. And thank you very much, Jeff, for joining us and sharing your wisdom. And I think anybody listening has plenty of good things to take away from this conversation, and we'll look forward to sharing it as well. So thanks for the time and for the ideas.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Have a great weekend. And next week, Megan, who do we have Jen next weekend?
No, next weekend we have Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Take a little break and
so we're taking
enjoy
a break.
A holiday, and then
Exactly.
and then we come back after that. And yes, I think that is Jen that week, but I'll have to look at our schedule. We've got a few really amazing people to follow on Jeff today, and looking forward to it, and wishing everyone a lovely Thanksgiving and a happy Friday.
Have a great holiday.
Thank you again.